Coming up on Arirang News, President Yoon Suk-yeol in Warsaw holds bilateral talks with his Polish counterpart Andrzej Duda. Topping the agenda were deepening economic cooperation and restoration of Ukraine. Torrential downpours once again drenched South Korea with a heavy rain warning issued for the capital. Tonight, we take to the streets to see how the rain is gripping Seoul. South Korea's central bank has left its benchmark interest rate on hold for 4 times in a row at 3.5%. The rate gap between South Korea and the U.S. could widen further as Fed officials signal another rate hike this month. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. The leaders of South Korea and Poland agreed to take their strategic partnership to a new level on Thursday as they declared a number of agreements reached in their bilateral summit. Our presidential correspondent Oh Soo-young is in Warsaw and brings us the latest from the joint press conference held less than an hour ago. So Soo-young, what were the main takeaways?
Good evening, Cheong. So one clear outcome from the summit today was the move towards deepening Korea and Poland's economic relations between commercial ties to a value-based cooperation. Now, the two countries may be geographically far away, but they do see eye to eye on various geopolitical issues that affect global security, the world's economies, which all trickle down to the individual's livelihood. In that regard, the two presidents jointly condemned North Korea's recent missile test and its nuclear weapons program and agreed to bolster efforts to improve the North's human rights situation, as well as block its dispatch of illegal migrant workers, along with its malicious cyber activities. The Korean and Polish leaders also discussed the war in Ukraine, agreeing to bolster their solidarity in safeguarding the values of freedom, rule of law, and human rights across the world.
러시아의 우크라이나 침공을 국제사회의 자유, 인권, 법치에 대한 도전으로 보고 전쟁 종식과 평화 회복을 위한 지원을 지속해 나아가기로 하였습니다.
Most significantly, Korea and Poland penned a memorandum of understanding on rebuilding Ukraine amid its war with Russia, an effort that President Zelensky has said could cost up to $1.1 trillion. Now, the two sides agreed to cooperate on reconstruction and development projects in Ukraine, as well as the planning of land, cities, and infrastructure, all related to Ukraine's reconstruction, as well as expand exchanges and cooperation between public and private firms to support these kind of efforts.
특히 우리는 한국과 폴란드가 우크라이나 재건에 있어 최적의 파트너가 될 수 있다는 점에도 공감하였습니다. 오늘 양국 간 체결된 인프라 협력과 우크라이나 재건 협력 양해각서는 양국 기업 간 협력을 확대해 나아갈 수 있는 좋은 기반이 될 것으로 확신합니다.
Now, this agreement comes on top of efforts to bolster South Korea and Poland's already budding business ties after bilateral trade last year reached an all-time high of $9 billion, with Korean firms expanding into Poland's high-tech industries such as electric vehicle batteries and 5G. Another MOU was signed to boost further trade and investment in various industries, business activities, and supply chains. The two leaders also agreed to further bilateral cooperation in strategic areas such as building a nuclear power plant in Poland, defense industry cooperation, as well as infrastructural projects, particularly in the transportation sector with a separate MOU.
Right, and I believe the two countries will be putting these economic agreements into action during President Yoon's trip.
That's right. Mr. Yoon is traveling with a delegation of 89 corporate leaders, notably those in the construction, IT, and logistics sectors, as well as the Export-Import Bank of Korea, who are going to attend a series of business events with the president.
At the Korea-Polish Business Forum, we expect to sign dozens of cooperation MOUs in various fields, including not only existing cooperation fields such as batteries, the defense industry, and nuclear power plants, but also cooperation in high-tech industries such as future cars, aviation, and AI, and cooperation in infrastructure and human resources.
Well, do keep us updated, Soo-young. Thank you for your coverage. That was our Oh Soo-young traveling with the president. Now in Jakarta, top diplomats from South Korea and Japan met on the margins of the ASEAN-related meetings. On top of their agenda were Tokyo's plan to discharge Fukushima wastewater and North Korean missile threats, as were touched upon by President Yoon and Prime Minister Kishida the previous day. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji has more.
South Korean Foreign Minister Park Jin and his Japanese counterpart Yoshimasa Hayashi held a meeting in Indonesia's capital city of Jakarta to discuss a wide range of issues, including the wastewater discharge from the destroyed Fukushima nuclear power plant and North Korean threats. This is the first time in 2 months that the two officials have met in person. Their last meeting was in May in Hiroshima. During the closed-door meeting that lasted about 45 minutes, Park reportedly stressed that South Koreans' health and safety was his first and foremost concern, and said the Japanese government needed to take measures to reassure the public. He asked Japan to share its monitoring results of the discharge in real time with South Korea, and to halt the release process if the concentration of radioactive material surpasses international standards. These are some of the measures that President Yoon also requested of Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida during their summit the previous day. In response, Hayashi reportedly said that his country would monitor the situation and take appropriate measures if the radioactivity measured exceeded limits. Also on the agenda was North Korea, especially since the meeting of the ASEAN Regional Forum, or ARF, set to take place in Jakarta on Friday, is a rare international occasion that the North takes part in. Both ministers strongly criticized the regime's missile tests conducted the day before, with Park stressing that this was a serious violation of UN Security Council resolutions that could not be justified. He added it was regrettable that the North continues to ignore its people who are suffering from poverty and instead waste its assets on nuclear missile development. Ahead of the meeting, Park had also told reporters that it was important to show the international community's commitment to nuclear disarmament.
Through the ARF, the only multilateral security platform in the region that North Korea takes part in, it's important to show that the international community's efforts for denuclearization are stronger than the North's efforts to develop nuclear weapons.
It's likely that North Korean ambassador to Indonesia, An Kwang-il, will attend the ARF meeting on Friday instead of the regime's foreign minister. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
North Korea confirmed this morning that it test-fired a Hwasong-18 solid-fuel ICBM the previous day, observed by its leader, Kim Jong-un. Experts say the missile appears to have the required range to potentially hit the U.S. and beyond. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
North Korea confirmed that it test-fired its Hwasong-18 solid-fuel ICBM on Wednesday, under the watchful eye of leader Kim Jong-un. The North state-run news agency, the KCNA, on Thursday reported that the ICBM flew around 1,000 kilometers for more than 74 minutes at an altitude of over 6,600 kilometers before landing in the EC. It was the regime's second launch of the Hwasong-18 after its first test launch in April.
The first launch was to test the flight performance and separation process at a lower altitude. The second launch, however, tested not only the separation and flight performance but also the maximum performance of the engine at a much higher altitude.
With the current engine performance, the missile could also potentially hit anywhere in the world.
When fired at the right angle, it can fly more than 15 to 16,000 kilometers, so it has the required range to hit not only the US, but the entire world. The weapon is very dangerous in that sense.
The launch comes as North Korea accused the U.S. of plotting to use nuclear weapons against the regime under the Washington Declaration, which includes enhanced deployment of U.S. strategic assets in South Korea.
We can interpret the launch as a message of warning against the deployment of a U.S. nuclear ballistic submarine in South Korea.
Kim has also vowed to take a series of stronger military offensive actions until the U.S. and South Korea admit and give up their hostile policy against the regime. In response, the South Korean military said it will strengthen its defense posture against any threats from North Korea. Choi Min-jang, Arirang News.
A powerful monsoon front has been formed, bringing heavy downfalls across South Korea. Citizens are advised to take caution against potential damage. Shin Se-byuk reports.
Heavy rainfall is once again battering South Korea. The Korea Meteorological Administration warns that the country is in for an intense bout of concentrated downpours. The rain is traveling from the west coast to the capital region. A low-pressure system that is bringing a new, powerful monsoon front will reach its peak overnight. The rain will range from 30 to 80 millimeters per hour, which triggers heavy rain alerts being issued. Until Saturday, the surrounding capital region will get 100 to 250 millimeters in total. This is adding to concerns over possible damage as the torrential rain comes just 2 days after heavy rainfall had already battered the country. The ground has been softened, and that makes it easy for landslides to occur. To that, President Yoon Suk-yeol ordered the government and related officials to make all-out efforts to prevent any damage and human casualties from the heavy rains. The Seoul metropolitan government, as of 9:30 a.m. Thursday morning, has been working in emergency response mode to monitor possible damage. Seoul City is also taking action to make sure roads that are prone to flooding are blocked off. This time, some regions will see over 400 millimeters. Even heavier rain is expected for Chungcheongnam-do and Jeollabuk-do provinces. A massive water bomb of over 400 millimeters is forecasted for those regions. This comes as the monsoon front will linger in the capital region overnight and then travel southward from Friday morning. The rain will continue until Saturday. Other regions should also brace for torrential downpours of over 300 millimeters, and this includes Chungcheongbuk-do province, the southern part of Gyeonggi-do province, and parts of Gangwon-do and Gyeongsangbuk-do provinces.
The weather agency has urged for thorough preparation as the monsoon front is expected to remain active and heavy rain will continue periodically until the weekend. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
The nation's central bank yet again decides to keep its benchmark interest rate unchanged at 3.5%, taking into account a host of economic variables. Our finance correspondent Lee Dae-yeon reports.
The Bank of Korea has frozen its key interest rate for the fourth consecutive time. The central bank announced a decision following Thursday's Monetary Policy Committee meeting. With the rate freeze, the figure stays at 3.5%.
Inflation is expected to remain above the target level, and we still need to monitor the monetary policies of major countries and the household debt situation too. The Board of Governors voted unanimously to maintain the current tightening stance.
The BOK began raising the base rate in August 2021 when it decided to normalize the rate, which had been significantly lower due to COVID-19. But the base rate has remained at 3.5% since February. Concerns over the economy were the major factor behind the BOK's decision. However, it's still uncertain whether South Korea's economy will see a rebound in the second half of this year as the country awaits recovery in exports and domestic consumption. The Finance Ministry earlier this month lowered this year's economic growth outlook from 1.6 to 1.4%. The Bank of Korea also lowered its forecast to 1.4% amid sluggish recovery for the IT sector and the underwhelming impact of China's post-COVID reopening. The reason concerns over record-high delinquency rates against loans with the Korea Federation of Community Credit Cooperatives is another factor behind the decision. The cooperative has been struggling with liquidity woes and bank runs due to soaring loan defaults, which are causing anxiety in the financial market. The country is also seeing a slowing trend of consumer price raises, with the inflation rate last month dropping to the 2% range for the first time in almost 2 years. However, one expert says it's hard to say that rate hike factors are all gone.
Inflation rate can once again go up to 3% range. This 2.7% figure can't prove that the inflation is over, as it's due to the base effect of last year when the rate reached its peak.
The Bank of Korea says all members of the Board of Governors agree rate hikes to 3.75% are possible, adding rate cuts are too early to call amid inflation uncertainty. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S., the inflation hit its lowest point in more than 2 years. Despite the drop, the Fed officials have signaled another rate hike by a quarter point at its next meeting this month. Take a listen at what this means for the rate gap between South Korea and the U.S. down the road. The continued surge in U.S. consumer prices seen over the last 2 years finally seems to be cooling off. The latest consumer price index data from the Labor Department on Wednesday shows that U.S. annual inflation slowed to 3% last month from a year ago. It's been easing for 12 consecutive months, and it's a sharp fall from a 40-year high of more than 9% in June 2022. Some say then that the U.S. Central Bank's fastest monetary policy tightening campaign since 1980s is nearing an end. But with this still remaining above the Federal Reserve's 2% target rate, officials have signaled another rate hike by a quarter point at its next meeting in 2 weeks.
The sense of the summary of economic projections and the decision really is just that, given how far we've come, it may make sense to move rates higher, but to do so at a more moderate pace.
If the Fed raises the rate by 25 basis points this month, it'll widen the gap in rates between South Korea and the U.S. to a record high 2 percentage points. One expert says the widening gap between those rates could lead to capital outflow from South Korea, but he believes it's not likely to cause volatility in the foreign exchange market.
There is a chance that it might cause instabilities in the currency market and accelerated capital outflow, but right now that possibility seems very low. Even though the interest rate gap is 1.75 percentage points, the currency market has been relatively stable.
The same expert adds, as long as it is slow and steady, the Korean economy can handle it, and that the country is currently in a position where the risks of raising the rates outweigh the risks of maintaining them. Japan's imminent wastewater release from its damaged Fukushima nuclear power plant is already causing a decrease in seafood consumption in neighboring South Korea, sparking concerns by fishermen. Our Moon went out for a fact check on seafood safety.
This empty market in Seoul is one of South Korea's biggest fish markets. So why is there nobody around?
The first thing to greet visitors at Norangjin Fisheries Wholesale Market is a wide array of colorful banners. They read, "Our seafood is safe, buy with confidence," and false horror stories about nuclear wastewater are unacceptable. And this is what's keeping the market empty. Widespread concerns over the safety of seafood with the impending release of treated wastewater from Japan's damaged Fukushima nuclear plant. Sales at fishery markets such as this have plummeted, putting the livelihoods of merchants at stake.
Sales have fallen to half the amount they were before, despite media outlets and the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries saying that there are no radioactive substances like cesium in the water.
The few people seen at the market are those that believe the formal reports released by the IAEA last week and the government's endorsement that the treated wastewater meets international standards.
The government says it's safe, so I'll eat it. I'm only going to be buying enough to eat today and store only a little.
Fishermen are also feeling the brunt of the impact. With the South Korean government having no immediate plans to lift import restrictions on food sourced from Fukushima, it's fish caught in neighboring waters that people are avoiding. Boats in harbors are sitting idle as a result.
Us fishermen depend on how much we sell at what price for a living. But prices have fallen to a third of last year's prices.
Unlike the plummeting sales of seafood, sales of sea salt and dried seaweed have jumped in retail stores.
As you can see here, there's a sign explaining the lack of salt on the shelves. This company has seen sales of sea salt up by 150% and sales of dried seaweed up by more than 20% across its stores.
As these items have a longer shelf life, people are buying them to store before the release of the treated wastewater.
It's been almost a fortnight since we last had any coarse sea salt on the shelves. Customers began panic buying before that when they heard the news.
Sea salt is an integral part of South Korean cuisine. Not only is it used in the national dish kimchi, but it's also used in sauces for many dishes.
Soy sauce is also made using salt, so that's becoming more popular these days too. A lot of customers are buying soy sauce now that they think they can't buy it later.
But by this logic, shouldn't consumers be eating as much seafood as they can before the release of the treated wastewater?
Consumption is based on psychology. Consumers often decide to buy things purely based on how they're feeling, and in this case, their concerns are affecting what they buy or don't buy.
This means that easing these concerns should take priority above directly attempting to boost consumption of seafood, such as the government's plans to provide cash vouchers worth around $50.2 million to consumers.
I think these concerns will be eased with transparent, regular, and continuous sharing of accurate information by the government.
With consumers being able to access information freely online, whether it's correct or not, the Korea Consumer Agency warned against fraudulent advertisements after some circulated on the net encouraging consumers to hoard sea salt. Experts at home are eager to clarify such misinformation.
The salt will be no different from the salt produced following the damage of the plant back in 2011, containing minimal traces of cesium, strontium, and plutonium. The tritium that isn't filtered out in treated wastewater evaporates with the water.
As Japan's neighboring country, the release of treated wastewater is an issue which is closer to home for South Korea than other countries. It looks as though only time and transparent information sharing will be able to ease the burden on consumers and fishermen alike. Moonsoon, Arirang News.
Seoul High Court on Thursday ruled that the government's refusal to issue visa to Korean-American singer Steve Yoo should be taken back. The appellate court said on Thursday that although in principle those who renounce Korean citizenship to evade military service should not be granted the right to stay according to the law, the right to visit and stay should be given if the person is over 38 years old and does not threaten the national interest. The lawsuit was filed by Yoo, aged 46, against the South Korean Consulate General in Los Angeles, which refused to issue him an F4 visa given to overseas Koreans. Yoo, who rose to stardom in South Korea in the 1990s, chose to renounce his Korean citizenship in 2002 and became a U.S. citizen, allegedly to dodge compulsory military service. He has since been barred from entering Korea. The 30th Korea Art International Grand Exhibition Festa is being held on Wednesday by the Korea Art Exchange Association. The exhibition will continue until July 18th at the Insadong Korea Gallery in Seoul, along with a campaign to promote the peaceful end of the Russia-Ukraine war and assist refugees. Over 300 paintings by artists from 12 countries, including the US, China, and Australia, are being displayed to mark its 30th anniversary. The officials have stated that a portion of the proceeds from the sales will be used to support people affected by the war.
A powerful monsoonal rain front will continue to drop heavy showers tonight. For parts of Chungcheongnam-do and Jeollabuk-do provinces, extreme downpours are expected, with up to 400 millimeters in the forecast. The surrounding regions, including here in Seoul, will see up to 300. Along with the heavy rain, thunder and lightning will follow at times. Depending on the movement of the rain clouds, periods of downpours will vary. For tonight, those across the Seoul metropolitan area should stay alert as locally heavy downpours are possible overnight. By Saturday, the rain front will move down towards the south of the country. Torrential rainfall can trigger landslides and even disrupt power supplies. Conditions will be dangerous until this weekend, so please take extra precautions. Under rainy spells, Seoul and Busan will be starting off at 24 degrees Celsius. As for the daily highs, Seoul will get up to 26 degrees, Gwangju 28, Gyeongju will be reaching 29 degrees. Until next Monday, the entire nation will see monsoonal showers. It's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all for tonight's newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with the latest news tomorrow. Good night.